So thank you for joining us today. We are sold out, so there's a wait list, and we have recorded the program that we will make available later to members. So thank you for joining us. We are always looking for ideas on programming. So if you have a particular idea that you would like to have us review or present in these Friday chats, please go ahead in the chat function and put your ideas, because we're always looking for great ideas for programming. So in light of Women's History Month, my name is Carolyn Nopar. I am a CWIP board member, and I am the co-chair of the communications committee. And we are recruiting. So if you, at the end of the program, I have information for anybody who is interested in perhaps getting more engaged and more involved in CWIP. Communications committee is a great committee. So this particular topic, positioning yourself for success, we did a survey back in December, and what we found was that a lot of our members were very, very interested in some professional development opportunities. And I had recently read that when filling out applications, men, if they match 60% of all of the listing, will apply, whereas women have to match 100% before they'll even think about applying. And I thought that was so interesting. And I thought, what else are we missing? So in light of Women's History Month, I thought it made sense to bring in 3 experts who can kind of share with us what they're seeing on the other end, what they're seeing as recruiters, what they're seeing as women on the other end, to sort of share their insights and kind of peel back the curtain and get us the inside view. So just a few housekeeping things. We are going to have the panel discussion with our 3 panelists for about 45 minutes. And then we are going to open up the chat for additional questions, which I will read out. I would ask you, we have over 100 people on this particular webinar, so it's well attended. If you put items in the chat now, we won't see them. So my suggestion is wait till about 7:45 and to enter in your questions, and we'll go from there. So at this point, without further ado, let's get started. I'd like to introduce our panelists. Marian DeBerry is Senior Counsel and Executive Search at Campbell & Company. Marian has over 25 years in executive search. Prior to joining Campbell & Company, Marian was Vice President with 2 retained executive search firms and an independent executive search consultant. In addition to executive search work, Marian has experience in the nonprofit sector as an education administrator and in the corporate sector in commercial banking and treasury. Marissa Delgado is a managing director of Koya Partners. With over 15 years in executive search industry, Marissa has successfully led executive and senior level recruitment across functions and industry. At Koya, Marissa leads a portfolio of executive level searches. She has deep expertise in social and human services, organizations with global reach, and with health-related nonprofits. Marissa was recognized by Crane Chicago Business as a notable leader in HR in 2021. As an active community member and leader, Marissa serves on the board for the Instituto del Progreso Latino. She has mentored and served on the planning committee for PEAK, the Partnership to Educate and Advance Kids. She's a fellow of Leadership Greater Chicago class of 2020. Marissa is also founding member of CHIEF, a private network designed for women leaders. Kara Kennedy. Kara Kennedy is Executive Director of Lumity, which, for those of you that don't know, Lumity is also the organization that manages NPO.net. Kara has dedicated her career to nonprofits ranging from healthcare, voluntary health associations, and youth-based organizations. Kara joined Lumity in August 2009. She previously worked for the Boys and Girls Club of America, American Lung Association of Metro Chicago, known as the Respiratory Health Association of Metro Chicago, the Alzheimer's Association, and 2 community-based hospitals. Kara is a highly versatile professional with expertise in fundraising, program development and management, strategic planning, and organizational development. And I'm Carolyn Nopar. As I mentioned before, I am a CWIP board member. I've been on the board for 9 years. And am also currently the communication co-chair this year. My background is basically, I have been in corporate and nonprofit management, and currently am the CEO and founder of the Chicago Fundraising Accelerator, which is an organization dedicated to helping small nonprofits engage their board in fundraising. So without further ado, I would like to begin to start with our panelists. At this point, Marian, why don't you start? If you could please share, how did you enter the executive search field?
Oh, such a roundabout story. Good morning, everyone. I didn't know anything about executive search at all. In fact, I was working in commercial banking, and I went to a workshop one night. It was, how do you make yourself visible to executive search firms? I again had no idea what it was. Didn't know this kind of work even existed. I don't remember what was said at that workshop. What I remember was that's what I want to do. And I went up afterwards and I introduced myself to the people that were running the workshop. I should say that at the time they were all men, because at the time there were no women in executive search. If you came into executive search as a woman, you did research, you supported the search, but you weren't visible, you weren't external. So they all were very polite, but they pretty much probably dismissed anything I said. It was 5 years later, though, that I met a woman who had a woman-owned firm, and that's how I came into search.
All right, thank you. Kara, can you share how you became involved with Lumity? Give us a little idea of your career trajectory.
Yeah, so good morning, everybody. When I was hired at Lumity, it came with NPO.net. And so quite honestly, I knew more about NPO than I did about Lumity before I started here. And so one of my big charges was to make sure that we were providing a great service and trying to expand to other communities. And so we've just really focused on updating and keeping the platform as fresh and adding the features that people are looking for, whether you're an employer or a job seeker. So I kind of fell into it. And I have to say that I kind of dove into the platform and started really seeing what was happening and how we were connecting people together. It's fascinating to see the trends over the years. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, wonderful. Marissa, can you share a little bit about your career trajectory?
Sure, good morning. I'm just gonna warn you all, I'm coming off a strep throat, so I don't sound like my normal self today. So I apologize a little bit. But I got into search. Out of college, I had recruited for a financial services firm. And I had started coaching a little league team on the west side of Chicago. And I was like, what am I doing working in insurance and financial services? I want to work with kids. And so I started, I left and I went and worked at a nonprofit. And I was trying to decide with my career, you're 25 and like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And I was thinking teaching, social work, nonprofit. And I was like, I think I want to teach. I thought I wanted to teach on the west side of Chicago, 5th grade. And through a friend of a friend, I was introduced to DHR International, which is a large global search firm. And they were looking for a nonprofit recruiter. I really didn't know what executive search was at the time, but it ended up working out and my career just started kind of taking off. And I volunteered on the side and did a lot of other stuff. And now with Koya, I'm able to mix all of the nonprofit, the love and passion for volunteering and nonprofit, and with my professional skill set. So.
Wow. So the key is just keep yourself open to opportunities. All right, let's get started. Let's start with a broad question first. What are the most common mistakes that you see women make when applying for jobs? And Kara, let's start with you.
Yeah, well, I think you queued it up in your opening comments, Carolyn. I think we all know that women have a tendency to, we see what the qualifications are on the job description, and we think we have to have them all in order to apply. And I will say that you should not. If you have the critical components of what they're looking for, then apply. Don't expect perfection. I mean, we throw that out there as employers. That's kind of our wish list of all the combination of features we want in a candidate. But, have the confidence if you know after looking at what that position is and the essence of what they're looking for that you can tell, apply. So that's number one. The second one is one big mistake that I see is a lot of people don't personalize their resume and their cover letter to the specific employer that they're submitting their application to. And thirdly, I would really focus on having somebody proofread your resume and your cover letter, because once you've worked on it so much, you're blind to the mistakes that might exist or things that aren't as clear. And really focusing on the results, the outcomes that you've achieved in those positions, not what the job description is.
Question. So in terms of determining though what's critical when I'm reading a job description, is it fair to say that most folks have like the first couple is their most critical? Okay, so if I match the first 4 or 5, I should apply.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Marissa, any thoughts?
Sure. I think there's a really good overview though, Kara. Thank you. I think a big part of it for me is use your networks, build your networks. I mean, this whole group, right? You should be connected with everybody on LinkedIn. You should be looking at your alumni networks. Build out your LinkedIn, because in my opinion, when you get to a certain point in your career, you shouldn't be like applying for a job, right? Like there should be some sort of introduction into the organization somehow through your network or through a recruiter or through somewhere. So I think building your social media, I think building your network through either social media boards, alumni, all that kind of stuff, like that's critical in my opinion. The other part of it is the biggest thing for me, I think, is just doing your homework, right? Like getting to know the organization. I think, you know, for resumes, like Kara said, tailoring that to what the job needs are. And you'll have different resumes for different roles, but then also your cover letter. If you're looking at an organization, my guess is that it's something mission driven with this group. I would absolutely be, you know, tailoring everything to what the mission of that organization is, or looking at their website and just making sure that you know their backgrounds and you know what they're looking for, their mission, and everything kind of flows from there.
Great. And when you say utilize your network, are you talking about like LinkedIn's relationship mapping feature?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just the people that you're connected to, your first, second, third connections on LinkedIn, getting introductions through other people to, you know, others in the organization. So ultimately, like when you are looking at it or you're going to interview or you have some names of the organization of who you're applying to, find out who you know that knows them. And I also think coming in from different angles is good, because especially if you're going to a larger organization, like, yes, you can get that one in, but like set up an information call, or if you can, like get to know somebody else in that role and see what they're like. So I think multiple angles is good too. You don't want to overdo it and over campaign, because as a recruiter, I can tell you it's too much, but a couple ins is really important.
Wonderful. Marian, what are the most common mistakes that you see people make when applying for jobs?
I'm going to start with the resume. I agree with everything that's been said, but I think your resume, there's this thing still floating around that your resume should be one page no matter what. I completely throw that out. I think if you've been working, every 5 years is a page for me. But understand, we're talking about a nonprofit sector. That might not be true in the private sector, but that's not our conversation here. So I have no issue with 3 or 4 page resumes. I do have problems with 7 or 8. So that's one. But second, within the resume, tell me what you did. Don't tell me what your job was. Because if you did your job well, it's really a different job now. It's not going to be the same for the next person. So I need to know those accomplishments. And hit me with them right in the front. And if you're raising money, have numbers, and have numbers in what they mean. In other areas, in any way that you can quantify it. Certainly can happen in finance, in marketing, and other kinds of disciplines. I also think even before you apply to the job, you should, so I agree so much with Marissa on this one, you should know something about the organization itself, so that the conversation that you have with the person that's interviewing you or screening you, your conversation can start at a very different level, and already you're attracting that person to you as a candidate because you know something about the organization and you don't have to ask the kind of very basic questions that we might expect from entry-level people. You're a seasoned professional now. You should have different sets of questions and they should start at a different level. So those are my thoughts.
Great. All right. The second question is, okay, so now that we know what some of the common mistakes are, what I want to know now is how can women improve their results? You know, if you have ideas in terms of what men do to sort of show a contrast, great. But it's like, what can we do to improve the results that we get, you know, from our job search or when applying for jobs? And you know what, Marissa, let's start with you.
Sure. Marian was good. I mean, this is a majority of the group in here, I think, does a lot of fundraising, right? So my thoughts are, you know, making sure that you are showing those results that you have on your resume is important. Knowing your numbers, having examples, having stories is really important. But I think the best way to improve your results is to have really good results in your work that you're doing right now. When we look at fundraisers, I've done quite a few fundraising searches in the past. I actually recognize a number of you on this call. It's nice to see and hear many of you again. But when we do searches, there's certain things that I look for, especially, and I'm going to talk about fundraising for a moment. The first thing is that I think I look for something that stayed somewhere for 4 or 5 years at least, because I don't think you can really see results in fundraising until you have that data. So I think, you know, your first year is really getting to know the organization. Year 2 is laying in the strategy, building the relationships. Year 3 and year 4 is when the money starts to roll in. If you're there 4 or 5 years, you can show significant results. If you're jumping every 3 years as a fundraiser, that's a red flag to me. So the first thing that you can do in order to change your results and looking for new jobs or getting in higher level positions is to have some stability and some serious results in the role that you're in currently. And then I look for, you know, all right, where were you when you started? Where is it now? Did you have some upward mobility in that organization? Were you promoted? And were you given more responsibility? I also, when I think about fundraising or even just in general, going into CEO roles or something, or mid to senior level roles, I'm good with like jumping into larger organizations, because I think also as fundraising, you go somewhere, you raise 5 million, the next place you want to raise 10. And then after 10, you want to raise 20, then 50, you know, so you are looking to ladder up a little bit. But I think that demonstration of success in your current role is what's going to kind of give you the best opportunity for great results in your career. Oh, the other thing that I would say too is that you don't have to get it all out there, right? Like when you're having a first conversation with an organization, there's going to be so many conversations through a process. Listen to the question, answer it, and be done, right? Like ask if they need more intel, or if that makes sense, or are you being clear? Is like anything else you can share? They'll let you know if you need to be more detailed. But really, honestly, the people that constantly get themselves in trouble are trying to put it all out, not in trouble, but they don't get the job, are putting it all out there on that first meeting, and it's too much.
Great. Marian, what would you recommend to people to improve their results?
Well, I want to respond also to Marissa's comment about make your statement and be done. I used to have a sign on my desk that says silence is only bad in radio. And my husband used to say that because you want some spaces there to fill it. But I just wanted to respond more to that because I think it's such a great point. But I think the other thing that happens when you're trying to, when women often come into this as if they are subordinates to the process. Men come in, and I'm being general, and I understand that it's not always true, but men will come in as partners. They think, I absolutely can do this job. I don't know why we're even having this conversation. Now that's smug, but I get it. Women think, is it okay for me to say this? Should I make sure that I say this? And it's not true for all women. So again, I'm generalizing, but overall, when we talk about the context of this conversation, put yourself out there and understand that you have value and power in this conversation, or we wouldn't be talking to you. Because there are lots and lots of people that have been interested, but we came to you to talk about this. So that's one, understand that. And the second is improving your results. Sometimes you will get a no. No doesn't necessarily mean no. I mean, we mean it when we say no. We're not trying to play with you. But at the same time, if you really believe you have a case and that maybe we overlooked something, you need to let us know about that. It might not necessarily change the result, but we need to know what it is we might have overlooked. So, be bold in that sense. Don't be, don't go overboard, but understand how to advocate for yourself.
Great. Kara, any thoughts?
I think the two lovely ladies covered it, to be honest.
All right, great. So it's interesting. One of the things that's really popular now is this idea of bringing your own self to the process. And I think one thing that is not sort of mentioned sometimes is people hire people. They're also looking for a cultural fit. So if you are really, I used to do this, I used to be really, really professional, but the problem is if you're really, really professional and they don't get a sense of who you are, they want to hire people they like too. Or at least that's sort of my impression. I don't know if you three disagree with me, but it's, they want to make sure it's a good fit. They got to work with this person. So, the next question is, how can women better leverage recruiters? In other words, the tools and the resources that are available to us, what can we do better? And Kara, let's start with you.
So I was looking at some of the NPO.net statistics, and since January 1st to the end of February, we had over 1,100 new job seekers put a profile in the system, but only 700 of them actually put their resumes in the system. And I would say when you are going to use a platform like NPO.net, take advantage of putting your resume up there, because people like Marian and Marissa have access to all of those resumes, and they do search as a way to approach people who might look like they're a good fit for an opportunity. So I would say that would be my number one answer based on NPO.net.
You know what, when we were chatting before, you talked a little bit about setting up job filters, alerts, algorithms. Can you speak a little bit about that? Because I thought it was really, really interesting, and people may not be aware.
Sure. I mean, I think when you are using a job board like NPO.net, basically there are those filters that you can say, this is the type of position that I'm interested in. And then you can indicate what type of format you want to be notified when that job appears in our system. So you can get a text message, you can get an email, it is out there. And so you should use those, because that'll save you a lot of time for going through and siphoning through a bunch of, we've had over 1,000 new jobs posted just since January. So, that's a lot to go through. So streamline and focus. So that way you're not wasting your time and you're getting notified as soon as it's posted. So that way you can jump on it as soon as possible and personalize that cover letter and that resume and get it submitted.
Great. Marian, any thoughts on how we can better leverage recruiters?
I just think there are a couple of things that will strengthen the process of working with recruiters. And I think the first one for me is get to know us before you need us, meaning before you're in a search, so that we can also get to know you, so that we'll be able to think about you when there's an opportunity that fits your background and your experiences. So that's the first one. And I also think that in working with recruiters like Marissa and I, we are doing outreach to people whose we are looking for great recommendations of people that we think should be candidates. Talk to us, because we'll remember if you were a good source, and we'll remember if you absolutely blew us off. Doesn't necessarily mean we won't talk to you, but it's a better relationship if you just say, if you've got no one, send an email that just says, "Hi Marian, I'm sorry, I wish I could think of somebody. I don't. There's no one in mind. Best regards." And that's fine. At least we know that you acknowledged us, because we do have kind of long memories around this. We don't hold it against you, but we do remember the people who actually work with us. Don't apply for everything. We see your resume over and over and over. You haven't focused. And I think the last one is when you talk to us, if there's anything that's controversial or provocative, tell us. Doesn't necessarily eliminate you, but we need to know because we don't want to be surprised on the other end when someone on a committee says, "Well, did you know that Barbara?" And there we are looking silly. Um, so we can be a better advocate for you because we expect things to happen in a career, and we can be a stronger advocate for you as a candidate if we know what that is ahead of time.
Great. Okay. Marissa, any thoughts?
I thought those were really good points. Marian, you're right. Like, we don't want to be surprised. Like, let us know. And I agree. I would double up on the give ideas, be thoughtful about your interactions with recruiters because you definitely do remember. And if you have ideas, that's great. And not everything's going to be the right fit for you for different organizations, and that's okay, right? You're looking for it's not right until it is. So no, that was great.
That's right.
Great. All right. Thank you. All right. This was sort of a new question I kind of threw in. We didn't talk about this on the pre-call, but I thought this might be interesting. What is your favorite interview question and why? So in other words, what is your favorite interview question and why? Because, you know, this has all evolved, right? Recruiting has evolved. So we want to understand what we're getting into. So Marian, let's start with you. What is your favorite interview question and why?
Why is this job better than the one you have now?
And why are you asking that?
Because I'd like to know whether you're running from your job or running to the one we have.
Interesting. All right. Kara, what's your favorite interview question?
I like that one, Marian. I'm going to take that one down.
Yep, feel free.
Well, one of mine is, you know, of all of your accomplishments, what are you most proud of? And I like asking that because it gives you a lot of insight into what are, you know, what matters to that individual. And it also tells you, if they tell you something that does include the challenges that they've run into, that they're going to be more transparent and honest about, you know, to accomplish something big, it's not an easy road, right? So it just tells you a lot about that person's, you know, perseverance and what, if they're going to be honest and real with you.
Great. Marissa.
I like both of those quite a bit. And I'm all about like, what are you running to, not running from, and what you're proud of. But I think mine right now, honestly, I love asking about diversity, equity, inclusion, why it's important and how it shows up in their work and their lives. Those are, I think, some of the most interesting conversations right now.
Great, great. Okay, so we've talked a lot about sort of, you know, an overview of sort of, you know, what not to do, sort of gave people an idea of what you're looking for. What would you tell your 25-year-old self about job seeking, about, you know, looking for a job? You know, what are the things that you would say, you know, to, you know, yourself as a younger woman? I'm not trying to put an age on anyone, but what would you say to yourself as a younger woman? Kara, let's start with you.
So I think one of my first things is to be open to possibilities. You know, I was someone who was very, you know, I had a roadmap and I did follow that, but there were other opportunities and I didn't really look at them. And I think it's important to actually really step back and take a look at things that may not be specifically in that path that you know, kind of vision for yourself. And I, you know, on the other side of Lumity, we work with so many STEM professionals. And I have to tell you, I hear it in everybody. It isn't gender specific, but a lot of people get a degree in college and then they think they're supposed to go do these things. But I will tell you, probably 70% of the STEM professionals did not have a STEM degree. And so they saw something and pursued it and they were able to make it happen. So that's probably one of my things that I would say. And then another one is, I'm really tired of hearing people hide behind, I'm an introvert, and therefore I try to avoid stepping out of my comfort zone and making things happen for myself. And there are so many opportunities that I know where I hedged, or I, even as a simple thing of when I go to conferences, sometimes I see myself getting there right before the sessions start instead of getting there earlier, so that way I can be networking. Those are the opportunities that open up doors. You never know who you're going to meet, and you never know what's going to come from it. And I think we all know that in today's world, it's those relationships and having people know who you are, what you're about, and what it is you're looking for, that when that opportunity comes around, they're gonna get you in the pipeline for that. And so I just think that we all need to get past that and push ourselves to that next self of putting ourselves in a path that who knows what's going to happen. So those would be my recommendations to myself.
Wonderful. Marian.
I would have told my 25-year-old self to be on time because I was late everywhere. And it's, it's rude, frankly. I mean, 1 or 2 minutes is one thing, but I would be like 15 minutes late for things. But the other thing I would say is you don't need all the answers. You don't have to have a clearly laid out path. I would feel badly sometimes because I would see my friends and they would just be going up the ladder, as it were, and they were doing this and they were speaking at this place, and the next thing you know, they were getting other degrees. And I'm thinking, what's wrong with me? I'm flailing around and I can't find a direction. If you're a good professional, you'll find direction. You really will. I want to speak to Kara's point about introversion. Because we're on some ways contrasting men and women. I have never heard a man say they're introverted, ever. I mean, they may say it in a social context, but in jobs, I've never, ever heard him say it. I wonder sometimes if we as women use introversion as a cover because we're afraid to take the risk. And introversion doesn't mean that you're not good with people or that you're not outgoing. It means as much that after a while you have to pull back because you're a little bit oversaturated. Well, before you get to that point, there's lots of good you can do for your own career in networking.
Marissa.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this since you asked this, what would I tell my 25-year-old self? I definitely think try different things. I think do the jobs that you want. Like, even if you're in a role, like let's say you're in an entry level or mid-level role, and there's different things that you can be doing to try that next step up. Start doing it in your career. I don't care about the title, just start doing the work, right? So try, do the job that you want, kind of thing. The other thing I think that is always important is to find mentors, like have really good mentors, either where you're at or go somewhere where you can learn from someone. I think that is key to a successful career. And then one person that I used to work with told me once, and this stuck with me, which was master what's in front of you and be patient for your success. And that has kind of given me I have high expectations for myself, right? Probably more than my bosses or anyone else that I've ever reported to. My expectations are a little higher. And it's kind of given me just like, all right, just slow down. It's okay. You'll get there. And I think even as I came to Koya, I was a top performer at DHR. My career took off. And when I got to Koya, it was such a different culture. And I was just like, go, go, go. And this kind of aggressive sales, like let's do this mentality at DHR, which I loved and I thrived there, was not the same at Koya. And I'm not gonna lie, it took me a good 2 years before I figured out what was the right culture and what was the right, how to be successful there, which was hard for me. So just give yourself patience. And now I'm 6 years in and I'm in heaven, right? It's amazing. But it took me a while to get there. So I just be really patient with yourself and understanding.
Great. That's great. I love that do the job you want. You know, I think that's where, yeah, going to your boss and saying, I want to try this, or can I do a piece of that? I think that shows initiative, and then maybe gives you the skill set that you might need. That might be a way to sort of broaden your experience within your existing company. Because I'm with you. I have done some recruiting, and I see you know, people jumping ship after 18 months consecutively in a number of different jobs, and that is a bit of a red flag. I have one other question. We sort of talked about it in the pre-call. We talked a little bit about social media presence, and I want to just dwell on that because I think it is so critical. I mean, we're seeing this in terms of donor acquisition, but in terms of your job hunt, the concept of having a social media presence, what does that look like? And I'm throwing these ladies for a loop because we really didn't talk about this, but I just wonder, and I'm opening up to you, do you have any thoughts? Marian, any thoughts on social media presence?
Well, one is actually social media and one is more traditional media. You need a presence. If we can't find you on LinkedIn, you really don't exist. You just don't, because we've got to find something, and that's one of the first places that we go, just to see who you are and what you've done, and to make sure that your resume matches what your social media presence is. So that's one. And so be careful with your social media presence to make sure that it's accurate, that it really reflects what you do. Now, when we go to Facebook, then we can get into more, be careful with the pictures that are there. Sometimes you can't control them, and I do respect that. But where you can control them, use the privacy settings well, because again, you just don't want someone to run across a picture that is going to be misconstrued for what it really is. The third one for me, though, is just a little pet peeve, and it has to do with thank you notes. And I know that people have now moved pretty much to email thank you notes. But if you are going to use paper, and this is where I get deadly conservative, you have 3 choices of paper: white, beige, and if you're feeling a breakout moment, light blue. Don't show up in pink. It's just too much of a signal you don't want. And don't have birds and cats and other little cute danglies on the front. You know, you're not thanking your best friend for taking care of your kids for you for a day. You're in a professional situation. You've diminished yourself by doing that. I so believe that. We see these emails and we think, really? What was this about? So that's mine on social media.
All right. Before I get to the other 2 panelists, we are going to begin questions shortly. So feel free to use the chat to enter in your questions. Marissa.
Yeah, we've already gotten one.
Yeah.
Right. Social media presence.
I think those are really good points. The privacy center is really important, right? Privacy settings are important. Every year I try and pick kind of like a word of my year, right? And 2 years ago, I remember my word was authenticity. And so I want to show up in every meeting the same way that I would show up in my friend group or my alumni group or whatever it might be. I want to bring my whole self to work. I want people to know who I am. So in that way, what I've done, and I remember being like nervous about it at first because I started having clients and candidates start requesting friendship on Facebook or Instagram. And I'm like, ooh, like I'm a little nervous, right? But then I started kind of accepting everything. I was like, they're going to know me for me. And I have found that there is a lot of serious philanthropy and relationships built and recognition going on in social media in Chicago specifically. I find that Facebook is more kind of work focused than Instagram. Instagram seems to be like a little bit of the closer friends. Snapchat, no way, like I'm out. Like I am not doing Snapchat with any friends or anything like that, or TikTok or with any colleagues or work stuff. Like that stuff is more private and fun, you know? But like I think it's important for you to show like who you are and someone, and if you're going to have it open, like keep it, you know, relatively professional, but show who you are, bring yourself out there. I think that that's a good thing. We do online presence check for every candidate before they would interview. So know that like, if it's out there, we're going to see it. My Twitter probably gets a little bit more political than maybe some people would like, but it's who I am and what I believe. So I put that out there too. I think I have some privacy settings on there, but use your privacy settings, be authentic, and know that if it's out there, people are going to look for it.
Kara, social media presence.
Yeah, so I have a love-hate relationship with social media. So I would say when it comes to job seekers, you know, I agree with everything that Marian and Marissa have been talking about. LinkedIn is really where you definitely have to have the presence. And I just think it's important. It's a way to stay connected with people. And, you know, I know that even just for myself personally, that it really is important to stay kind of present and to really see what other people are posting and to, you know, respond. And I know that I feel much better when I am doing that than when I'm not, like if it gets pushed off to the side, because then when I need something or I want something, if I've been, you know, interactive and been quote unquote in relationship with people, then it's easier to make those asks. And I feel more comfortable saying, hey, there's this job opportunity I'm interested in. You have a connection. Will you, you know, be willing to make an intro for me to help me get an informational interview, something like that. So those are the things. And as an employer, we definitely do look at the social media presence of our candidates to make sure that there's not something out there that, you know, if we hadn't done the search and then it pops up on the job, you know, it could have been prevented. So definitely, you know, follow everything that Marian and Marissa talked about.
So in terms of social media, I just want to just delve into this a little bit more. So obviously LinkedIn, I mean, that's a given, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like Facebook you check, like Twitter, Instagram, like what are the social media feeds that you look at, I guess?
We're looking at all of them. We'll look at 5 pages on Google, 5 to 15 pages on Google. We're starting to actually outsource it now because it was taking so much time. So we're looking at news articles. We're looking at Google, just Googling the name and things like that. Then Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. We're doing a whole check.
Got it. Okay. All right, great. All right. Well, we're going to begin some questions now. We've got some great ones. And Jackie Davidoff is going to start us off. Will you speak to the way women diminish themselves versus speaking to their capacities? Will you speak to the way women diminish themselves versus speaking to their capacities? So, you know, we talked a little bit about saying I'm an introvert, right? What are some other things that women do that's kind of diminish themselves that maybe they don't realize they're doing? Marissa, any thoughts?
I think there's a couple things. I think you kind of like, you want to talk from an asset-based language versus a deficit-based, right? So you don't want to put yourself down. You don't want to, like, you want to be, this is your time to be pretty candid and assertive about what you've done. I think keeping it facts-based will be helpful. You know, when I started, here's where we were, here's where it came from, talking about your team. If you have a team that you're working with, I think that's important. And just being really honest about where you want to go and what you want to do. Those are the things that I think. Actually, one of my colleagues just, we have a kind of a channel that we talk about different, I'll pop it in the chat. There's a kind of a flip the script about women in the workplace, and there's an infographic that really kind of spoke to me, right? Where it says like, oh, this woman gets emotional. Well, let's talk instead, describe the consequences of her behaviors without using labels, right? So there's I'll pop this in the chat. You guys can take a look at it because I thought it was interesting and kind of speaks to this conversation.
Great. Marian, any thoughts on how women diminish themselves when they're speaking about their capabilities?
If I were to draw arrows, I would say that women start from here and try to work here. Men will start from here, they get down to here. They just make assumptions about a phrase I just like to use sometimes teasingly, their exquisite beauty. And they work from there as women who have to work up to theirs. And I've done it. I'm sure all of us have if we sat and shared stories about it. But that's one of the ways that you diminish themselves. The other is you really more so, and I don't want to make it such a strong black and white contrast of men to women, but there are some things that have seen over the years. I mean, women will accept what you say. You call and you say, well, I'm sorry, you're not the right fit for this particular position, or, they're looking for something else. And women say, oh, it was so nice to talk to you. Thank you so much. Well, men will say, can you tell me why? I mean, it's still a learning experience, and they want to know, like, what are they going to take into the next opportunity that maybe they missed on this one. And a lot of times, women, we want to stay your friend. Well, we want to stay on good terms with you, so I'm not going to push so much. Yeah, push, go ahead, push. That's what we're there for. I think that's a big way that women diminish themselves. And I'm back to your original comment also, Carolyn, that women feel like they have to have 110% of the characteristics before they'll even send their resume.
Right. Right. Go for the first 4 or 5. Kara.
Yeah, I think Marian's kind of getting on what I came to mind when you asked the question about, it's hard for us to know, if we're being too aggressive. And a lot of times we hold back from what it is we really want, or putting out what, whether it's a salary range that we're looking for. And when the job offer comes and they offer something and it's lower, I can't tell you how many times, I'll make the offer, and the men definitely push back and will go for much higher. And the women might ask, but the way that they ask is as if, do me a favor. And it's like, no, you're going to be doing us a favor if you really believe in yourself. And so it's not being that cocky, smug, approach, but it is being confident and being able to say, I think my value is this, and this is what I really am expecting at this point in my career. And so I just think being clear about what it is that you want, and stating it in a confident way, and holding your ground and your presence.
I will also say, as somebody who has hired somebody at nonprofits, the first salary we offer is not as high as we can go.
Right.
It's not.
Right.
So yeah, ask for more,
Unless you got a really great recruiter that's pushing it and saying, like, let me get to the top. I mean, we're also, it's against the law now to ask people, where are you in compensation, right? Like, where are you sitting right now? But what we do is we try to base what it is. And we're actually trying to put compensations on position profiles even more. So it is it's out there and it's transparent, but I try so hard to give the best possible compensation on the front end and push the clients to go as high as they possibly can. Because I'm probably part of it is because I know the women aren't going to push as much too sometimes. Although I'm pretty aggressive when it comes to comp. So
what is the best verbiage we should use when asking to say, is that as high as you can go, or should we come up with the dollar amount?
I don't know that you need a dollar amount so much, but I do think you should say, oh, that really wasn't what I had in mind. Now, remember, there's a movement going on now for transparency more at the front so that you know the range going in. So that changes the way that you may negotiate it at the end of the opportunity or the search. But rather than saying, is that as high as you can go, you've opened yourself to say, nope, yes, that's as high as I can go. Versus, I understand that that's what's stated. However, I had expectations of X, and you see where it goes. Because if you gotten to be the second or the first, you've got some leverage.
Great.
And just for everybody's awareness, when it comes to the job platform industry, we've all put in the salary range. It has not been made a requirement yet, because it's kind of a 50-50 at this point where employers feel comfortable putting it out there. But I think to Marian's point, that there is going to be more pressure for employers to be more transparent, and that field in our platforms will eventually be required. And I think that's a critical step for progress.
All right, we've got a few more questions. From Liz Dunn, what else can be done to position yourself for a long-term interest in organizational leadership versus positioning for other fundraising jobs? So I think this is sort of like, how do you move up, right? Kara, you talked a little bit about this in terms of your job at Lumity, sort of moving up, right? You were not an executive director before you started at Lumity.
Correct. And when I was interviewing, I was in transition and I could only apply for executive director positions. And this was during the last economic downfall. And so it was scary, but it was the best advice and coaching that I got. But when I was in the interview process, I picked up on that there was some hesitancy about me as a candidate. And I didn't know what it was. So I was brought in for a breakfast to be basically told that I was not going to be continued in the running because they felt like they really wanted somebody who had been an executive director before. And when I started here at Lumity, our budget was around just under $1 million. And so I sat and I listened. I put it out there. I hear there's a hesitancy. And he said, well, you're picking up on something. And then he said, the previous person had not been an executive director and it hadn't worked out well. And we're thinking that we need somebody who has that experience. And that's when I came back and said, it sounds like you're looking for a high achieving performer. And anybody who's already been an executive director, this is not going to be enough of a challenge for them, to be at an organization that's this small. So, I have groomed myself for 20 plus years for this. I've done X, Y, and Z. Those are all the critical skills and knowledge that an executive director needs. I just need somebody to give me that chance. And will that be you? And then I shut up. And he sat there for literally 45 seconds. And this was an Accenture partner. And he just said, you need to repeat that. And I got to continue in the process.
I think that's such a good point, especially when you're talking about like the shutting up part. Like I always think, like in my current, the best advice I ever got, and I've used throughout the years, is that when you're negotiating your salary and you're negotiating a raise, not actually like where you're at right now and you're trying to get a raise or whatever it is, you have to be so direct about where you want to go, right? So making sure that like your boss, the leadership, they know that you're ambitious, they know where you want to be. I remember when I got into a job, my first management job, I told my CEO at the time, I said, I want to be at 6 figures within 2 years. And this was a pretty substantial move from where I had been. And then I just went quiet and this was a man, and make them come to you, right? Like if you can go silent when you're negotiating, that's so much power right there. It's such an amazing negotiation tool. Just keep that in mind. So like when they say like, well, what are you looking for? You say, well, I want to get paid $105,000 or whatever it is. And then that's it. Let them come back. And it can be awkward, but do it.
I love that.
It works.
You know what, I'm going to move on only because we are starting to get all these questions. How do we make relationships with recruiters before we apply for a position?
Send us an email. I mean, it's that simple. You can send us a LinkedIn invitation too, and just introduce yourself and ask if there's maybe 15 minutes we can spend together. And I think honestly 15 minutes is all that we need at that point. We don't have an opportunity that may fit. If we do, we'll extend the conversation, but we don't have an opportunity that's going to align with your experience at that time. We just want to know you, and 15 minutes really is long enough to do that. And tell us what you're looking for and what you've done, and we'll tell you who we are, and we'll stay in touch.
And be patient.
Yeah, and be patient. That's right.
Because it might not get back to you right away. Because there's a lot going on too. I mean, like I try and do 1 to 2 courtesies a week, but it gets, right now I can't. But we do try to, I think sending that information in, if you're applying it, like you can do that on our website, on the Koya website. You can put, your information in the system. But on the recruiting side, we'll reach out to you for the right roles, but just be patient with it. But we're here to get to know you.
Is one way to maybe effectively do that is also to follow you on LinkedIn, right? Follow you to find out what's going on, because you're posting jobs, et cetera, right? So it's a way to sort of follow you. And then if I'm being a good partner, as Marian described, promoting those, right? Promoting those to my network, being a good partner to promote maybe your searches in my network. Hey, this looks like a great job type of thing. Any thoughts on when you talk about bringing your authentic self to work, how do you navigate with a professional name versus a nickname? Any thoughts on, because the social media uses my nickname, but I'm using my current name. Any thoughts on nicknames in?
I think it depends what you want to be called, you know, in the professional setting.
Okay.
Almost everybody at work calls me Mo. All my family and friends call me Mo, but when I'm external and when I'm doing calls and stuff like that, I'm Marissa. But my friends know me as Mo or Momo. So, I mean, just kind of depends what you want people to know. What do you want to put on your resume? You could put I could put like Marissa Mo Martin, but for me, it's Marissa or Delgado now. Sorry, guys. I just got married. So now it's just, you know, Marissa Delgado. So, yeah.
All right. Does being in the same position for years and years on paper negatively impact you for a higher level position, even though you're a high performer, but just have struggled to move up due to lack of internal growth opportunities?
It's a really loaded question. You're being in an organization for years is fine because you should have a lot of accomplishments that are attached to it. At the same time, one of the things that, for instance, hiring managers and search committees think about if you have been somewhere for a long time is your ability to now embrace another culture and how long it will take you to do that. And so, but there was a second part of that question that actually was not exactly connected. Oh, you said, but they hadn't moved up because of lack of opportunities. Is that what I heard?
So the lack of opportunities for growth internally. So they've been in a position for a long time, and so they haven't had an opportunity to move up. Is that perceived negatively?
It can be if we ask you, you know, why this next job is better than the one you have, and you tell me that for the last 5 years you've been trying to move up and haven't. You know, if you told me that that's true for 2 years, I'll take it. But 5, I'm on the neck. Well, just what were you doing those other 3 years? So, yes, it can be a mixed message. Be careful with that.
And if you really wanted to move up, why not move to another organization where you can get that opportunity?
That's right.
Well,
again, yeah, I think like Marian said, you get a lot of success. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Well, I think the question is, if I've been in an organization for a long time, is that perceived negatively, even if I don't have any upward growth?
But again, it's not necessarily negative. It's just that that's one of the things that will be in the conversation about you is how you can adjust to a new organization.
Yeah, we look at it as like, can you repot?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, we are almost at 9 o'clock, so unfortunately we did not get to all of our questions. This was a hot topic, clearly. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank all of our panelists for their time and expertise. This was really, really great. At this point, I am going to share my screen. We are, as I said, recruiting for the communications committee. So if you are interested, this is a committee that we are going to be promoting, if you want the inside view of CWIP, if you want it's probably going to be predominantly remote. Here's my information. Please shoot me an email if you would like to join us. We would love to have you. So it's Carolyn@noparconsulting.com. And with that, thank you all for coming. Thank you for a wonderful discussion.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It was fun to see all of you.
All right. Have a good day.